Right, hello everybody, welcome to the Clery Football Channel, and if I were to put a gun to somebody's head and said, name a football formation or I redecorate the opposite wall, they would say 4-4-2 through tears and giant panic breaths. Which is weird, isn't it? Like the whole scenario, yes, admittedly, but the answer especially, because nobody plays it anymore, do they? In fact, according to The Athletic, 0% of Premier League teams set up in that system this season, and that's been part of a continual slide from like 17% 10 years ago. But if you just think back as far as the 90s and the noughties, then every single team you still romanticize were playing it. Alex Ferguson's treble-winning Manchester United side, they were a 4-4-2. Arsene Wenger's Invincibles, they were like pretty much a 4-4-2. Even teams on the continent at the time, that AC Milan side, it was a bit diamondy, yes, but it was still a 4-4-2. The England national side could not deviate from this system for the better part of 10 years, despite never having a proper left winger required to actually play it. All of those Liverpool sides in the 1980s, even the Brazil team of the 1972 World Cup, it didn't function like a 4-4-2, but deep down, Jorginho and Rivellino, they were as much wingers as they were forwards. That was a 4-4-2. For like 30 or 40 years, this was just exactly how you were supposed to play football until all of a sudden, it just wasn't. And now we have 0% of Premier League teams using this formation. Except that's not true, because almost every single Premier League team does use this formation. In fact, pretty much any team across Europe uses this formation, just not when they've got the ball. And as such, it's maybe become the most important formation in all of world football. You just have to really look to try and find it. And just very quickly, before we start, you may have noticed some new branding around the side of the pitch, and that is because ACFC is now very proudly brought to you by Trading 212, who I actually like in real life. It is a game-changing commercial partnership for us, and you'll see more about what that's going to do in the coming weeks. But anyway, now, if there's one thing you should know about me by now, it's that the only thing I like talking about more than football tactics is the history of football tactics. So if you've ever wanted to know where 4-4-2 came from, then you're really going to enjoy this bit. And if you haven't, then tough. We're doing it anyway, because the history of it will tell you why it became so popular, why it stopped working, and now why it's come back. Now, there's a gag in Ted Lasso where they're all talking about it, and the guy from Horrible Bosses 2 says, "Who invented this? The Russians?" And the punchline is, yes, they did. Now, very quick history lesson for you, right? In the beginning, football was mad and formless and mostly just the drunkest people in the village kicking shite out of each other. But by 1848, it had some rules. And by 1925, it had what we now know as the offside rule. And then immediately after that, Arsenal invented tactics. Now, this is all a grotesque oversimplification, right? But football basically started as this 2-3-5 system, and then as a response to offside coming in, Herbert Chapman invented the WM formation, which everybody decided was just great and brilliant and was so universally popular, it is still, over 100 years later, the reason squad numbers tend to be the way they are. If you've ever wondered why 9 is the centre forward number, really randomly, it's because of this. But that is, of course, a whole other considerably more nerdy video, which if you would like me to make that, because I'd like to make that, tell me in the comments, because I will. Anyway though, over time, the WM starts to get replaced by the 4-2-4, because you can see straight away you've now got a man advantage in the final line, so you can do more things there, and you end up with a man advantage in the back line, so you can do things there. And if you're thinking, well, that's all well and good, but surely you've got a massive disadvantage in the middle of the pitch, Don't worry about it. There wasn't really a middle of the pitch back then. Teams weren't playing through the way they do now. They would just go from box to box, so having an extra player in those areas mattered a lot more than missing two in here. And this is where the Russians come in, because this man, Viktor Maslov, who most people have never ever heard of, took this and pretty much invented modern football tactics. He went and he took a sport that had for decades just been kick and run. Like, there were genuinely periods in the history of football where dribbling was considered unmanly. Like, you would be mocked for running with the ball. Instead, you were just supposed to hoof it up the other end of the pitch and then lamp somebody to try and get it back. So he took the 4-2-4 and he adapted it into the 4-4-2. And from here, his Torpedo Moscow side was suddenly able to control the ball when they had possession and work it up the pitch as a unit, but also defend in a really solid shape as well. And very, very quickly, football went from being an individual sport where you just gave your best players the ball and waited for them to make something happen to a far more structured team game. Now, just before we get into any of that, your reminder that ACFC is brought to you by Trading 212. Hooray! And they currently have an exclusive cash ISA offer for ACFC viewers, and that means a higher interest rate. Woohoo! Just for you. Basically, you get a market-leading interest rate on contributions made in the current tax year. And what is a cash ISA? Well, they are a straightforward, tax-free way for you to save. They're used for short-term savings like a rainy day fund or spontaneous European away days, and you can usually access your money when you need it. All the while, it earns more interest than if you were just leaving it sitting in your current account. The Trading 212 Cash ISA is flexible, allows unlimited withdrawals, and is easy to set up. New customers can access the offer via the exclusive link in the description or by using the code ACFC. And I quite literally have one already, so there you go. Back to the video. And it caught on, in England especially, very quickly. Like, Alf Ramsey went and won the 1966 World Cup by using a 4-4-2 with incredibly narrow wingers to combat all the 4-2-4s that were at that tournament. And we actually did a whole video about this, by the way. You can go and watch it if you want to see me talking about this system for 20 full minutes. But the very short version is that Alf Ramsey got a lot of shit for this. People said that by him packing the midfield, prioritizing defensive stability, and actively trying to win the ball back, that he was negative, he was taking the joy out of football. But yes, by the late 1960s, early 1970s, everybody thinks that 4-4-2 is absolutely brilliant, and it stays that way for the better part of 40 years, until this man. Now, Mourinho did not invent the 4-3-3. Like, its origins are nearly as old as the 4-4-2s, and they go back to Rinus Mikkel's total football with the Netherlands, Cruyff at Barcelona, Cruyff at Ajax, loads of teams across South America. But what he did that nobody else had done before was make it stick in England. After winning the Champions League with Porto, Mourinho gets the Chelsea job and he takes Claudio Ranieri's tried and tested 4-4-2 and immediately changes it into this. And he's very transparent about his reasons for doing it. Like, in an early interview, he just says, if I have a triangle in midfield, Claude Makelele behind and two others just in front, I will always have an advantage against a pure 4-4-2 where the central midfielders are side by side. And that's because I will always have an extra man. And he does. Chelsea are untouchable for 2 whole seasons. They win back-to-back titles, and they're so good that they force a meta shift in the Premier League, even though I don't quite know what that means. 3 versus 2 in the middle of the pitch means that the deepest player can always go and collect the ball from the defence with relative ease, and if he is tracked and put under any pressure, it just frees a man up further ahead. And of course, if he is not put under any pressure, then he's completely free to use his passing range to find someone out wide, to find someone further forward. It damns these 2 lads if they do, and damns them if they don't. So now, all of a sudden, every team in the Premier League wants to get a third man in the centre of the pitch. So the 4-3-3 and also the 4-2-3-1 become incredibly popular because they're both systems that allow you to do that. The 4-3-3 gives you a 6 and allows these two to push forward, whereas the 4-2-3-1 gives you a 10 and has these two stay further back. But it is not just the formations, because around this time in English football especially, something else happened, and that was a major change in how wingers were being used. Crossing the ball was being seen as less and less of a reliable way to create and score goals. So more and more wingers were being used on their wrong side, on their wrong foot, so they could come into the middle of the pitch and create from much better zones. And obviously less crossing of the ball means there's less and less reason to have two centre forwards. So all of these things combined, the changing in the wingers, having an extra man in the centre of the pitch, that has led us to here, where 0% of Premier League teams are using a 4-4-2. Except, as we have already said, like 7 or 8 minutes ago, I don't know how long it was, that's not true. You look at almost every single Premier League team this season, and when they do not have the ball, you can quite easily see them set up in a 4-4-2. Arsenal in particular have been doing this really well for almost Mikel Arteta's entire time as manager. Manchester City under Pep prefer it in particularly big games. Michael Carrick has come in at Man United and immediately got them out of a back 5 and into a back 4 when defending. Liverpool under Arne have tried a load of different things this season. They'll sometimes do it in a diamond, but more often than not, it's just a 4-4-2. And even Liam Rossini at Chelsea, he likes to have them in a back 5 when they're defending deep, but as soon as they push out, that starts to turn into a 4-4-2. So why then has a formation that had fallen so completely out of fashion come so dramatically back in all of these sorts of situations? And this is going to sound a little bit weird at first, right? But it is precisely because of this numerical disadvantage it has in the middle of the pitch. When you are stretched out, midfield versus midfield, it is 3 versus 2 here, which is obviously quite bad. But then, when you sit in as a low block to defend, if the opposition push up, it actually becomes a 4 versus 3 in the most important part of the pitch. And yes, of course, the opposition can add more players into that zone to get that advantage back, but then all you're doing is massively congesting the one part of the pitch you would be trying to make some space in. So the more bodies that are there, the more that favours the defence, even if it's not their bodies. And obviously having 2 banks of 4 here allows teams to perfectly maintain all the distances horizontally and vertically between their players while still having 2 other players who are able to put pressure on the ball. Teams who have 5 in this area, yes, they've got more bodies, but they really struggle to shut down all the passing lanes into the middle of the pitch. When you've got 2 here, you can have one player closing the ball down while another shuts off an option for him. You watch this example here and you've got really good distances between the lines, but also they're nice and narrow. They're not allowing themselves to get stretched across the width of the pitch. They're denying space in the centre and instead leaving options out wide. Now, if you just sort of like mentally picture that they had 5 here and 1 pressing, you're not really any more covered centrally and this player can only block passes. Like if your man here decides to press or wants to put any pressure on the ball, then he's very easily taken out of the situation. But because there's 2 of them, one can go at the man while the other cuts off the most obvious option. They can dictate where that ball has to go. And because the 2 of them here are able to stop there being any time on the ball, it goes out wide where they don't want to cross it, and inevitably you force them backwards. But that is ultimately the goal with any kind of compact defensive shape. Go all the way back to stop the opposition playing through, but then eventually when you force them backwards, go out with them and keep the pressure on further up the pitch. And because you're in 2 exact banks of 4, every single player has at least 2 teammates with which to take their own position. So it's very, very difficult to force one of them into a mistake because they'll know where they should be in relation to the guy in front or the guy behind or the guy to the left or the guy to their right. It's very hard to pull this shape apart. And it's also incredibly versatile. Like, it doesn't really matter what system you set up in, you tend to be able to get back into a 4-4-2 very easily. Like, this is a 4-2-3-1, for example. This is painfully obvious. Your wide forwards would just drop into more traditional winger positions while your 10 joins your centre forward and you've got a 4-4-2. If you've got a 4-3-3, for example, then pretty much the same again. Your wide forwards drop back into the midfield and then your 8 split with one of them sitting deeper with the defensive midfielder and the other going to press with the centre forward. And even if you've got a back three, like this is that 3-4-2-1 that everybody who is not a Man United season ticket holder seems to really like at the minute, you tend to always have one wing back who is better attacking and one who is better defending. So you simply shuffle them over like that. One of the 10s drops slightly wider on the side they're on to make another bank of 4, and then one of your forwards goes with your actual forward, and voila, 4-4-2. And yes, when you go really compact with it, teams often leave these massive big spaces out on the wings. But again, because it's such a compact and easy to understand shape, you can shuffle across really easily without players getting out of position. And that is like the point of the whole thing. It does not matter what is going on the pitch or where the opposition have the ball, you will stay very solid and difficult to break down. Like, that is what is so clever about this shape. It is its own best counter to its own biggest weakness. And just to go super football tactics version right at the end, right, we'll clear this and show you this instead, right? Give yourself a second. This is juego de posición, or however you're supposed to pronounce that. It is a very old concept, but it is still very popular amongst teams that have high volume of possession, and it is partly what killed 4-4-2 in the first place. Basically, the pitch is broken down into different zones and players are coached to occupy different lines and different lanes depending on whereabouts the ball is. And the idea is that you then avoid stacking multiple players on the same lines to give you constant passing triangles, useful spacing, and multiple options for how you will progress the ball forward. But 4-4-2, which almost never gives you any useful passing triangles or good distances between your attacking players, congests the central part of this philosophy so much as to make it incredibly difficult to use it when this is happening at the same time. Skinny jeans, flare jeans, as a great man once said. So yes, there you go. That's why every single team in the Premier League does not use 4-4-2, but also at the same time, why they do all use 4-4-2, plus like a 4 or 5 minute potted history of the formation. Can you tell I enjoyed this one? And also, just before we go, this is quite cool to say, thanks again to our sponsors, Trading 212. They're not just sponsoring this video, they are sponsoring the channel long term. We've been working on this behind the scenes for absolutely ages. It's a complete and utter game changer for us. And I wasn't just saying that in the advert, because I've got to, I actually do have their cash ISA. It is really, really good. So if you've got some savings and you know what to do with them, I would suggest doing that. I don't just recommend it, I'm living it. It's enough shilling for now though. You can get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. And if you've not already subscribed to the channel, then do that, please. Yes, that makes me very happy. And I'll see you next time for more footballing frivolity. Oh, lights have gone out. See, this is why we've got a sponsor, because we can't even keep the bloody lights on. Bye!